to the live studios here in Radha. No rest for the wicked, as they say. And my voice is not working properly, but we are going to do our duty. And this is the message. Even when it's not working properly, do your duty. And it'll start working soon. Welcome everyone from out there in cyberspace. Let's hear, shall we? The glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam by Sanatana Goswami. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarvalokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light, of sight to all the worlds. Haribol Shobha. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Dodita Ditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Savasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Mareka Bando Matsangin Madguro Mad Mahadana Mannishtadaga Madbhagya Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu Sadhuta Dayin Atini Chuchatakara Hanamun Chakadachin Mam Prem Narit Kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You know, the purpose of philosophy, and we've been hearing a lot of philosophy in the first canto and the first part of the second canto, is to search for the absolute truth. So the Bhagavatam is so kind that it begins to describe the absolute truth, not at the very, very beginning, but, well, it does in the first verse. It describes the absolute truth. Kind of like a dictionary meaning. But to describe the activities and pastimes and form and activities and purpose, all these things of the Lord, that's the goal of philosophy. So now we're hearing the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord to prepare us, to help us understand just how great He is, that He can do all these extraordinarily things that we can't even imagine. So we've come to the 24th verse of the 7th chapter, which is called Scheduled Incarnations. You can, anyway, there's a button that you can find, you can tell. scheduled incarnations with specific functions. Beginning with text 24. And you remember that I described yesterday how Lord Ramachandra and Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are the original form of God. So therefore there's more than one verse. Hare Krishna, Antonio, Antonio, Antonio. So he gets more verses than the other ones, Ramachandra, so far. The personality of Godhead, Ramachandra, being aggrieved for his distant, intimate friend, Sita, glanced over the city of the enemy Ravana with red-hot eyes, like those of Hara, who wanted to burn the kingdom of heaven. The great ocean, trembling in fear, gave him his way because its family members, the aquatics, like the sharks, snakes, and crocodiles, were being burnt by the heat of the angry, red-hot eyes of the Lord. Purport. The personality of Godhead has every sentiment of a sentient being, like all of the living beings, because he is the chief and original living entity, the supreme source of all other living beings. He is the Nitya, or the chief eternal amongst all other eternals. He is the chief one, and all others are the dependent many. The many eternals are supported by the one eternal, and thus both the eternals are qualitatively one. Due to such oneness, both the eternals constitutionally have a complete range of sentiments. But the difference is that the sentiments of the chief eternal are different in quantity from the sentiments of the dependent eternals. When Ramachandra was angry and showed his red-hot eyes, the whole ocean became heated with that energy, so much so that the aquatics within the great ocean felt the heat, and the personified ocean trembled in fear and offered the Lord an easy path for reaching the enemy's city. The impersonalists will see havoc in this red-hot sentiment of the Lord, because they want to see negation in perfection. Because the Lord is absolute, the impersonalists imagine that in the absolute, the sentiment of anger, which resembles a mundane sentiment, must be conspicuous by its absence. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, they do not realize that every sentiment of the absolute person is transcendental to all mundane concepts of quality and quantity. Had Lord Ramachandra's sentiments been of mundane origin, how could it disturb the whole ocean and its inhabitants? Can any mundane red-hot eye generate heat in the great ocean? These are factors to be distinguished in terms of the personal and impersonal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. As it is said in the beginning of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the Absolute Truth is the source of everything, so the Absolute Person cannot be void of the sentiments that are reflected in the temporary, mundane world. Rather, the different sentiments found in the Absolute, either in anger or in mercy, have the same qualitative influence, or in other words, there is no mundane difference of value, because these sentiments are all in the absolute plane. Such sentiments are definitely not absent in the absolute, as the impersonalists think, making their mundane estimation of the transcendental world. Text 25. When Ravana was engaged in the battle, the tusks of the elephant, which carried the king of heaven, Indra, broke into pieces, having collided with the chest of Ravana, and the scattered broken parts illuminated all directions. Ravana therefore felt proud of his prowess and began to loiter in the midst of the fighting soldiers, thinking himself the conqueror of all directions. But his laughter, overtaken by joy, along with his very air of life, suddenly ceased with the twanging sound of the bow of Ramachandra, the personality of Godhead. Purport. However powerful a living being may be, when he is condemned by God, no one can save him. And similarly, however weak one may be, if he is protected by the Lord, no one can annihilate him. 26. When the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with his plenary portion. The Lord comes in his original form with beautiful black hair, and just to expand his transcendental glories, he acts extraordinarily. No one can properly estimate how great he is. Purport. This verse is especially describing the appearance of Lord Krishna and his immediate expansion, Lord Baladeva. Both Lord Krishna and Lord Baladeva are one supreme personality of Godhead. The Lord is omnipotent, and he expands himself in innumerable forms and energies, and the whole unit is known as one, the one, Supreme Brahman. Such expansions of the Lord are divided into two divisions, namely personal and differential. The personal expansions are called the Vishnu Tattvas, and the differential expansions are called the Jiva Tattvas. In such expansional activity, Lord Baladeva is the first personal expansion of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vishnu Purana, as well as in the Mahabharata, both Krishna and Baladeva are mentioned as having beautiful black hair, even in their advanced age. The Lord is called Anupalaksha Margaha, or in still more technical Vedic terms, Avan Manasagochara, one who is never to be seen or realized by the limited sense perception of the people in general. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said by the Lord, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yogamaya Samavritaha. In other words, he reserves the right of not being exposed to anyone and everyone. Only the bona fide devotees can know him by his specific symptoms, and out of many, many such symptoms, one symptom is mentioned in this verse, here in this verse, that the Lord is Sita Krishna Kesha, or one who is observed always with beautiful black hair. Both Krishna and Lord Baladev have such hair on their heads, and thus even in advanced age, they appeared like young boys, 16 years old. That is the particular symptom of the personality of Godhead. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that although he is the oldest personality among all living entities, he always looks like a new, youthful boy. That is the characteristic of a spiritual body. The material body is symptomized by birth, death, old age, and diseases. But the spiritual body is conspicuous by the absence of all those symptoms. Living entities who reside in the Vaikuntha Lokas, in eternal life and bliss, have the same type of spiritual body, without being affected by any signs of old age. It is described in the Bhagavatam, Canto 6, that the party of Vishnudutas who came to deliver Ajamil from the clutches of the party of Yamadutas appeared like youthful boys, corroborating the description in this verse. It is ascertained thus that the spiritual bodies in the Vaikuntha Lokas, either of the Lord or of the other inhabitants, are completely distinct from the material bodies of this world. Therefore, when the Lord descends from that world to this world, he descends in his spiritual body of Atma Maya, or internal potency, without any touch of the Bahiranga Maya, or external material energy. The allegation that the impersonal Brahman appears in this material world by accepting a material body is quite absurd. Therefore, the Lord cheers.
Shut up.
Just goes to show you. We're just tiny little jivas. The allegation, Dr. G, Hare Krishna. Wait, no, put him in this chair. This is his chair. No, you have to go there. You act like I look. I mean, feel. Go ahead. You know, they say they have guardian angels. Hey, Ramdas Ji, so nice to see you, and your better half. Okay, comfy? Everything's okay? Everyone's okay? They talk about guardian angels. Right? Everybody has a guardian angel. He's above a guardian angel. It's true. I'm just trying to tell the truth. I made a vow, you know. I took a vow.
Is Maharaj. He takes care of everybody, even me, you know, and my husband.
Not, what do you mean even?
We are insignificant, but also he gives so much care and attention.
Yes.
Whatever you say is
Yes.
true.
Yes. That's what I meant. That he's more than a guardian angel.
Guardian Archangel.
Huh?
Guardian Archangel.
There you go. There you go. Okay. The allegation that the impersonal Brahman appears in this material world by accepting a material body is quite absurd. Therefore, the Lord, when he comes here, has not a material body, but a spiritual body. The impersonal Brahmajyoti is only the glaring effulgence of the body of the Lord, and there is no difference in quality between the body of the Lord and the impersonal ray of the Lord, called Brahmajyoti. Now the question is, why the Lord, who is omnipotent, comes here to diminish the burden created upon the world by the unscrupulous kingly order? Certainly the Lord does not need to come here personally for such purposes, but he actually descends to exhibit his transcendental activities in order to encourage his pure devotees who want to enjoy life by chanting the glories of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:13 and 14, it is stated that the Mahatmas, great devotees of the Lord, take pleasure in chanting of the activities of the Lord. All the Vedic literatures are meant for turning one's attention towards the Lord and his transcendental activities. Thus, the activities of the Lord in his dealings with worldly people create a subject matter for discussion by his pure devotees. Purport. Oh, I'm sorry. Text 27. There is no doubt about Lord Krishna's being the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how was it possible for him to kill a giant demon like Putana when he was just on the lap of his mother? To overturn a cart with his legs when he was only 3 months old? To uproot a pair of Arjuna trees so high that they touched the sky when he was only crawling? All these activities are impossible for anyone other than the Lord himself. Purport. One cannot manufacture a God by one's mental speculation or by numerical votes, as has become a practice for the less intelligent class of men. God is God eternally, and an ordinary living entity is eternally a part and parcel of God. God is one without a second. And the ordinary living entities are many without number. All such living entities are maintained by God himself, and that is the verdict of the Vedic literatures. When Krishna was on the lap of his mother, the demon Putana appeared before his mother and prayed to nurture the child in her lap. Mother Yashoda agreed, and the child was transferred onto the lap of Putana, who was in the garb of a respectable lady. Putana wanted to kill the child by smearing poison on the nipple of her breast. But when everything was complete, the Lord sucked her breast along with her very life air, and the demon's gigantic body, said to be as long as 6 miles, fell down. But Lord Krishna did not need to expand himself to the length of the she-demon Putana, although he was quite competent to extend himself more than 6 miles long. In his Vamana incarnation, he posed himself as a dwarf Brahmana, but when he took possession of his land, promised by Bali Maharaj, he expanded his footstep to the top of the universe, extending over thousands and millions of miles. So it was not very difficult for Krishna to perform a miracle by extending his bodily feature, but he had no desire to do it because of his deep filial love for his mother, Yashoda. If Yashoda had seen Krishna in her lap extending 6 miles to cope with the she-demon Putana, then the natural filial love of Yashoda would have been hurt, because in that way, Yashoda would have come to know that her so-called son, Krishna, was God himself. And with the knowledge of the godhood of Krishna, Yashoda Mai would have lost the temper of her love for Krishna as a natural mother. But as far as Lord Krishna is concerned, he is God always, either as a child on the lap of his mother, or as the coverer of the universe, Vamanadev. He does not require to become God by undergoing severe penances, although some men think of becoming God in that way. By undergoing severe austerities and penances, one cannot become one or equal with God. But one can attain most of the godly qualities. A living being can attain godly qualities to a large extent, but he cannot become God. Whereas Krishna, without undergoing any type of penance, is God always, either in the lap of his mother or growing up at any stage of growth. So at the age of only 3 months, he killed the Shakatasura, who had remained hidden behind a cart in the house of Yashoda Mai. And when he was crawling and was disturbing his mother from doing household affairs, the mother tied him to a grinding pestle, but the naughty child dragged the pestle up to a pair of 2 very high Arjuna trees in the yard of Yashoda Mai, and then the pestle was stuck between the pair of trees. They fell down with a horrible sound. When Yashoda Mai came to see the happenings, she thought that her child had been saved from the falling trees by the mercy of the Lord, without knowing that the Lord himself, crawling in her yard, had wreaked the havoc. So that is the way of reciprocation of loving affairs between the Lord and his devotees. Yashoda Mai wanted to have the Lord as her child, and the Lord played exactly like a child in her lap. But at the same time, he played the part of the Almighty Lord whenever it was so required. The beauty of such pastimes was that the Lord fulfilled everyone's desire. In the case of felling the gigantic Arjuna trees, the Lord's mission was to deliver the two sons of Kuvera, who were condemned to become trees by the curse of Narada, as well as to play like a crawling child in the yard of Yashoda, who took transcendental pleasure in seeing such activities of the Lord in the very yard of her home. The Lord in any condition is Lord of the universe, and he can act as such in any form, gigantic or small, as he likes. Text 28. Then also, when the cowherd boys and their animals drank the poisoned water of the river Yamuna, and after the Lord in his childhood revived them by his merciful glance, just to purify the water of the river Yamuna, he jumped into it as if playing and chastised the venomous Kaliya snake, which was lurking there, its tongue emitting waves of poison. Who can perform such Herculean tasks but the Supreme Lord? Text 29. On the very night of the day of the chastisement of the Kaliya snake, when the inhabitants of Brajabhumi were sleeping carefreely, there was a forest fire, ablaze due to dry leaves, and it appeared that all the inhabitants were sure to meet their death. But the Lord, along with Balaram, saved them simply by closing his eyes. Such are the superhuman activities of the Lord. Purport. Although in this verse the Lord's activity has been described as superhuman, it should be noted that the Lord's activities are always superhuman, and that distinguishes him from the ordinary living being. Uprooting a gigantic banyan or Arjuna tree and extinguishing a blazing forest fire simply by closing one's eyes are certainly impossible by any kind of human endeavor. But not only are these activities amazing to hear, but in fact all other activities of the Lord, whatever he may do, are all superhuman, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Whoever knows the superhuman activities of the Lord, due to their very transcendental nature, becomes eligible to enter the kingdom of Krishna. And as such, after quitting this present material body, the knower of the transcendental activities of the Lord goes back home, back to Godhead. Text 30. When the cowherd women, Krishna's foster mother Yashoda, was trying to tie the hands, when the cowherd woman, Krishna's foster mother Yashoda, was trying to tie the hands of her son with ropes, she found the rope to be always insufficient in length. And when she finally gave up, Lord Krishna, by and by, opened his mouth, wherein the mother found all the universes situated. Seeing this, she was doubtful in her mind, but she was convinced in a different manner of the mystic nature of her child. Purport. One day Lord Krishna, as a naughty child, disturbed his mother Yashoda, and she began to tie up the child with ropes just to punish him. But no matter how much rope she used, she found it always insufficient. Now this, don't get wrong, it's not that she wound it, and then it was too short. She put around, and it was too short. And then she went to the house and she tied more ropes together, and she put it around, and it was too short. And she kept doing this until she got all the rope in the whole village. Who knows how long it was? And she put it around, and it was 2 fingers short. Thus she became fatigued. But in the meantime, the Lord opened his mouth, and the affectionate mother saw within the mouth of her son all the universes situated together. The mother was astonished. But out of her deep affection for Krishna, she thought that the Almighty Godhead, Narayana, had kindly looked after her son just to protect him from all the continuous calamities happening to him. Because of her deep affection for Krishna, she could never think that her very son was Narayana, the personality of Godhead himself. That is the action of Yogamaya, the internal potency of the Supreme Lord, which acts to perfect all the pastimes of the Lord with his different types of devotees. Who could play such wonders without being God? Text 31. You notice how many more verses Krishna's getting? Lord Krishna saved his foster father, Nanda Maharaj, from the fear of the demigod Varuna, and released the cowherd boys from the caves of the mountain, for they were placed there by the son of Maya. Also to the inhabitants of Vrindavan who were busy working during the daytime and sleeping soundly at night because of their hard labor in the day, Lord Krishna awarded promotion to the highest planet in the spiritual sky. All these acts are transcendental and certainly prove, without a doubt, his godhood. Purport. Nanda Maharaj, the foster father of Lord Krishna, went to take his bath in the river Yamuna in the dead of night, mistakenly thinking that the night was already over. Thus the demigod Varuna took him to the Varuna planet just to have a look at the personality of Godhead Lord Krishna, who appeared there to release his father. Actually, there was no arrest of Nanda Maharaj by Varuna, because the inhabitants of Vrindavan were always engaged in thinking of Krishna, in constant meditation of the personality of Godhead, in a particular form of samadhi or trance of bhakti yoga. They had no fear of the miseries of material existence. In the Bhagavad Gita it is confirmed that to be in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by full surrender in transcendental love frees one from the miseries inflicted by the laws of material nature. I'm going to repeat that. It's so nice and important. They had no fear of the miseries of eternal existence. Material existence, sorry. In the Bhagavad Gita it is confirmed that to be in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by full surrender in transcendental love frees one from the miseries inflicted by the laws of material nature. Here it is clearly mentioned that the inhabitants of Vrindavan were extensively busy in the hard labor of their day's work. And due to the day's hard labor, they were engaged in sound sleep at night. So practically they had very little time to devote to meditation or to the other paraphernalia of spiritual activities. But factually, they were engaged in the highest spiritual activities only. Everything done by them was spiritualized because everything was dovetailed in their relationship with Lord Sri Krishna. The central point of their activities was Krishna, and as such, their so-called activities in the material world were saturated with spiritual potency. That is the advantage of the way of Bhakti Yoga. One should discharge one's duty on Lord Krishna's behalf, and all one's actions will be saturated with Krishna thought, the highest pattern of trance in spiritual realization. Text 32. When the cowherd men of Vrindavan, under instruction of Krishna, stopped offering sacrifice to the heavenly king Indra, the whole tract of land known as Braja was threatened with being washed away by constant heavy rains for 7 days. Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Braja, held up the hill known as Govardhan with one hand only, although he was only 7 years old. He did this to protect the animals from this onslaught of water. Purport. Children play with an umbrella, generally known as a frog's umbrella. And that's a mushroom. And Lord Krishna, when he was only 7 years old, could snatch the great hill known as Govardhan Parvata at Vrindavan and hold it for 7 days continuously with one hand, just to protect the animals and the inhabitants of Vrindavan from the wrath of Indra, the heavenly king, who had been denied sacrificial offerings by the inhabitants of Brajabhumi. Factually, there is no need of offering sacrifices to the demigods for their services if one is engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. Sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literature for satisfaction of the demigods are a sort of inducement to the sacrificers to realize the existence of higher authorities. The demigods are engaged by the Lord as controlling deities of material affairs. And according to the Bhagavad Gita, when a demigod is worshipped by the process, when the demigod is worshipped, the process is accepted as the indirect method for worshipping the Supreme Lord. But when the Supreme Lord is worshipped directly, there is no need of worshipping the demigods or offering them sacrifices as recommended in particular circumstances. Lord Krishna therefore advised the inhabitants of Brajabhumi not to offer any sacrifices to the heavenly king Indra. But Indra, not knowing Lord Krishna in Brajabhumi, was angry at the inhabitants of Brajabhumi and tried to avenge the offense. But competent as the Lord was, he saved the inhabitants and animals of Brajabhumi by his personal energy and proved definitely that anyone directly engaged as a devotee of the Supreme Lord need not satisfy any other demigods, however great, even to the level of Brahma or Shiva. Thus, this incident definitely proved, without a doubt, that Lord Krishna is the personality of Godhead, and that he was so in all circumstances. As a child in the lap of his mother, as a 7-year-old boy, and as an old man of 125. In none of these cases was he ever on the level of an ordinary man, and even in his advanced age, he appeared like a 16-year-old boy. These are particular features of the transcendental body of the Lord. Text 33. When the Lord was engaged in his pastimes of the rasa dance in the forest of Vrindavan, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavan by sweet and melodious songs, a demon of the name Shankachuda, a rich follower of the treasurer of heaven, Kuvera, kidnapped the damsels, and the Lord severed his head from his trunk. Purport. We should carefully note that the statements described herein are the statements of Brahmaji to Narada, and he was speaking to Narada of events that would happen in the future, during the advent of Lord Krishna. The pastimes of the Lord are known to the experts who are able to see past, present, and future. And Brahmaji, being one of them, foretold what would happen in the future. The killing of Shankachuda by the Lord is a more recent incident, after the Rasa Lila, and not exactly a simultaneous affair. In the previous verses, we have seen also that the Lord's engagement in the affairs of the forest fire was described along with his pastimes of punishing the Kaliya snake. And similarly, the pastimes of the rasa dance and the killing of Shankachuda are also described herein. The adjustment is that all these incidents would take place in the future, after the time when it was being foretold by Brahmaji to Narada. The demon Shankachuda was killed by the Lord during his pastimes on the Holika Purnima in the month of Palguna, and the same incident is still commemorated in India by the burning of an effigy of Shankachuda, one day prior to Holika Purnima, the day on which the festival, generally known as Holi, is celebrated. Generally, the future appearance and the activities of the Lord or His incarnations are foretold in the scriptures, and thus the pseudo-incarnations are unable to cheat persons who are in knowledge of the events as they are described in the authoritative scriptures. Text 34, 35. All demonic personalities like Pralamba, Denuka, Baka, Keshi, Arishta, Chanura, Mushtika, Kulavyapita, elephant, Kamsa, Kalyavana, Narakasura, and Pondraka, great marshals like Shalva, Dvidvita monkey, and Balvala, Dantavakra, the 7 bulls, Shambhara, Viduranath, and Rukmi, and also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsya, Kuru, Srinjaya, and Kekaya would all fight vigorously, either with the Lord Hari directly or with him under his names of Baladeva, Arjuna, Bhima, and so on. And the demons, thus being killed, would either attain the impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. Purport. All manifestations in both the material and spiritual worlds are demonstrations of the different potencies of Lord Krishna. The personality of Godhead Baladeva is his immediate personal expansion, and Bhima, Arjuna, and so on are his personal associates. The Lord would appear, and he does so whenever he appears, with all his associates and potencies. Therefore, the rebellious souls, like the demons and demoniac men, mentioned by names like Pralamba, would be killed either by the Lord himself or by his associates. All these affairs will be clearly explained in the 10th canto, but we should know well that all the above mentioned living entities killed would attain salvation either by being merged in the Brahma Jyoti of the Lord or being allowed to enter into the abodes of the Lord called Vaikunthas. This has already been explained by Bhishmadeva, 1st canto. All persons who participated in the battlefield of Kurukshetra or otherwise with the Lord or with Baladeva, etc., would benefit by attaining spiritual existence according to the situation of their minds at the time of death. Those who recognized the Lord would enter Vaikuntha, and those who estimated the Lord as only a powerful being would attain salvation by merging into the spiritual existence of the impersonal Brahma Jyoti of the Lord. But every one of them would get release from material existence. Since such is the benefit of those who played with the Lord inimically, one can imagine what would be the position of those who devotedly serve the Lord in a transcendental relationship with him. Text 36. The Lord himself, as his incarnation as the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, will consider his compilation of the Vedic literature to be very difficult for the less intelligent persons with short lives. And thus he will divide the tree of Vedic knowledge into different branches according to the circumstances of the particular age. Purport. Herein Brahma mentions the future compilation of Srimad-Bhagavatam for the short-lived persons of the Kali age. As explained in the 1st canto, the less intelligent persons of the age of Kali would be not only short-lived, but also perplexed with so many problems of life due to the awkward situation of the godless human society. Advancement of material comforts of the body is activity in the mode of ignorance, according to the laws of material nature. Real advancement of knowledge means progress of knowledge and self-realization. But in the age of Kali, the less intelligent men mistakenly consider the short lifetime of 100 years, now factually reduced to about 40 to 60 years, to be all in all. They are less intelligent because they have no information of the eternity of life. They identify with the temporary material body existing for 40 years and consider it the only basic principle of life. Such persons are described as equal to the asses and bulls. But the Lord, as the compassionate Father of all living beings, imparts unto them the vast Vedic knowledge in short treatises like the Bhagavad Gita, and for the graduates, the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The Puranas and the Mahabharata are also similarly made by Vyasadeva for the different types of men in the modes of material nature. But none of them are independent of the Vedic principles. Text 37. Okay, now we're going past Krishna's pastimes. How many verses? A lot of verses compared to the others. Purport. The incarnation of Lord Buddha.
You didn't read the translation.
Really? Text 27. 37. Text 37, sorry. It's been a long day. When the atheists, after being well versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets, flying unseen in the sky on well-built rockets, prepared by the great scientist Maya, their Lord will bewilder their minds by dressing himself attractively as Buddha, and will preach on sub-religious principles. Purport. This incarnation of Lord Buddha is not the same Buddha incarnation we have in the present history of mankind. That was described in the first canto, by the way, if you remember. According to Jiva Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami, the Buddha incarnation mentioned in this verse appeared in a different Kali age. In the duration of life of one Manu, there are more than 72 Kali Yugas, and in one of them, the particular type of Buddha mentioned here would appear. Lord Buddha incarnates at a time when the people are most materialistic and preaches common sense religious principles. Such ahimsa is not a religious principle itself, but it is an important quality for persons who are actually religious. It is a common sense religion because one is advised to do no harm to any other animal or living being, because such harmful actions are equally harmful to him who does the harm. But before learning these principles of nonviolence, unless one is humble and prideless, one cannot be harmless and nonviolent. And after being nonviolent, one has to learn tolerance and simplicity of living. One must offer respect to the great religious preachers and spiritual teachers, and also train the senses for controlled action, learning to be unattached to family and home, and to render devotional service to the Lord, and so on. At the ultimate stage, one has to accept the Lord and become his devotee. Otherwise, there is no religion. In religious principles, there must be God in the center. Otherwise, simple moral instructions are merely sub-religious principles, generally known as upadharma, or nearness to religious principles. Text 38. Therefore, thereafter, at the end of Kali Yuga, when there exist no topics on the subject of God, even at the residences of so-called saints and respectable gentlemen of the three or higher castes, and when the power of government is transferred to the hands of ministers elected from low-born Shudra class, or those less than them. And when nothing is known of the techniques of sacrifice, even by word, at that time the Lord will appear as the supreme chastiser. Purport. The symptoms of the worst conditions of the material world at the last stage of this age is called Kali Yuga, are stated herein. The sum and substance of such conditions is godlessness. Even the so-called saints in higher castes of the social orders, generally known as the Dvija Janas, or the twice-born, will become atheists. As such, all of them will practically forget even the holy name of the Lord, and what to speak of his activities. The higher castes of society, namely the intelligent class of men guiding the destinies of the social orders, the administrative class of men guiding the law and order of the society, and the productive class of men guiding the economic development of the society, must all be properly well versed in knowledge of the Supreme Lord, knowing factually his name, qualities, pastimes, entourage, paraphernalia, and personalities. The saints in higher castes or orders of the society are judged by their proportion of knowledge in the science of God, or Tattva-gyan, and not by any kind of birthright or bodily designations. Such designations, without any knowledge of the science of God and practical knowledge of devotional service, are considered to be all decorations of dead bodies. And when there is too much inflation of these decorated dead bodies in society, there develop so many anomalies in the progressive, peaceful life of the human being. Because of the lack of training or culture in the upper section of the social orders, they are no more to be designated as the Dvija Janas, or the twice born. The significance of being twice born has been explained in many places in this great literature. And again, one is reminded herewith that birth executed by the sex life of the father and mother is called animal birth. But such animal birth and progressive life on the animal principles of eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating, without any scientific culture of spiritual life, is called the Shudra life, or, to be more explicit, the uncultured life of the lower class of men. It is stated herein that the governmental power of society in the Kali Yuga will be passed over to the uncultured, godless laborer classes of men, and thus the Nridevas, or the ministers of the government, will be the Vrishalas, or the uncultured lower class of men in society. Does that sound familiar? Construction guy is, maybe it's similar. No one can expect any peace and prosperity in a human society full of uncultured, lower classes of men. The symptoms of such uncultured social animals are already in vogue, and it is the duty of the leaders of men to take note of it and try to reform the social order by introducing the principles of twice-born men trained in the science of God consciousness. That, by the way, is the purpose of this movement and what we're doing right now at the moment. This can be done by expanding the culture of Srimad-Bhagavatam all over the world. In the degraded condition of human society, the Lord incarnates as the Kalki avatar and kills all the demons without mercy. That form, by the way, is also described in Revelations of the Bible. Same exact form. Riding a white horse, carrying a double-edged sword, and cleansing the earth. We'll stop here. Hare Krishna. And move on to our reflective stage. Anything that stuck out in your mind from the reading, or anything that came to your mind as a result of the reading, or any...
Question.
Yes, sir.
So, in one of the reports, it said, Herculean, and then it made reference to rockets and things. And Buddha, when was the original text written? Just wondering.
It's eternal. The
So
original.
this was translated from, all that stuff was translated from.
It was not translated. It was the original text, the Sanskrit Devanagari script, was received by Vyasadeva in meditation. That's described in the first canto. Mm-hmm. And those verses, all 18,000 verses, even the verses in which he is talking to someone else, or even verses that are talked to people that are going to appear after him, they're all there. Nigama kalpa, taror, galitam palam. Nigama, the word nigama means Veda, and or Shruti, the original 4 Vedas. And agama means smriti, or scriptures that are written to explain those scriptures. And those scriptures are written and appear differently, a little differently. Not different in terms of meaning, but differently in terms of verses and sound. But the original 4 Vedas, including the Srimad-Bhagavatam, are Shruti. They never change. Every single syllable is the same. It can't change. Otherwise, you lose the meaning. You lose not just the meaning. You lose the power of the sound coming from the spiritual world. So that's the thing. So here, the Kalki Avatar described it happened in another Kali Yuga. Okay. And the text in itself is a history of the universe. And some of those events are not in order, are not in the same chronology, for different reasons. Because it's not like a mundane history book where everybody analyzes it, picks it apart, and doesn't accept anything on face value, but just has to hear from one over there and one over there and one over there to corroborate whether it's true. This is eternal truth, and therefore it has an effect. It has a different effect on the heart when you hear it. And that is the evidence. That is the actual certificate or diploma that you get when you hear the Bhagavatam with faith and with love and devotion. And if you have qualifications from previous births and you hear the Bhagavatam from the proper source, then you will feel something different than you've ever felt before. It doesn't happen all at once. It can happen all at once. It can. But generally speaking, it doesn't. It happens gradually as you hear and as you fall in love with Krishna. The more you fall in love with Krishna and hear these things, the more effect it has in your heart. And the perverted reflection of that is when we meet somebody and fall in love here and have our pastimes with them. But it's not the same love. It doesn't have the same effect. But it has a similar, an effect that looks similar because it's a reflection, a perverted reflection. Yeah. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's all right? Yeah.
Kind of stemming from what you were just telling him about awakening love for Krishna. The demigods know who Krishna is, and they're serving him out of duty, but do they incarnate on the earth so that they can learn to love Krishna?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. This is a very complex question. The answer to this question is not so simple. Sometimes associates of Krishna in the spiritual world will incarnate in the material world, but not on the earth, in higher planets. And then they'll pray to have Krishna as their son. And then Krishna will appear from the spiritual planet in the heavenly planets to become the partial incarnation of himself in order to fulfill the desires of partial incarnations of his eternal associates in the spiritual world, his mother and father. In other words, to be clear, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, or Devaki and Vasudev, who were the mothers and fathers of Krishna eternally in Goloka Vrindavan and Mathura and Dwarka, they expand themselves along with Krishna to take these roles, because wherever he goes, they have to go. They're his eternal associates. But they go as partial incarnations. Partial incarnations means they're the same persons, but they don't show all of the features and all of the emotions and all of the personality of those original personalities. They just show a part. So as does Krishna. Because they have a desire to have a further pastime. Like, for instance, they will do austerities to have Krishna as their father or son, and then he will appear sometimes in another time in the heavenly planets, in another form, to the same parents who do more austerities. And then when he comes as Krishna, those same partial incarnations will come into the body of the full manifestation of Devaki and Vasudeva, or Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, and become the father and mother of Krishna. But there's actually one mother, father and mother of Krishna, just as there's only one Krishna. Therefore, we cannot aspire to be Mother Yashoda and Vasudeva any more than we can aspire to be Krishna. But we can aspire to have a relationship with Krishna in a similar mood as his superior, elder in society. Why? Because Krishna wants it like that. He wants all these varieties of relationships and all these varieties, and so do some souls want that relationship. So when Krishna wants to taste it, these souls come with him to taste it in that different way.
I had a question.
Yes.
Who were the twice born that were mentioned that we just talked about?
Well, we have one birth by our mother and father, and we have another birth by the Vedas as the mother, and the spiritual master as the father. But we have to be qualified to do that in the Vedic age. In this age, you don't need any qualifications, because Lord Chaitanya came and he promised to deliver everyone. Of course, he didn't say when. But those who become fortunate enough to meet him face to face, or one of his intimate representatives, then they can get that second birth even without becoming qualified. But you do have to become qualified by submission. That's the only qualification, is sincerity. If you just sincerely want to know, then Lord Chaitanya will arrange it. And according to the proportion of the development of your service attitude in that submission, he will reveal to you that much of his personality and of your personality. This is one of the reasons why, according to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that we find the summary of Krishna's pastimes in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, just in short, and in the 10th canto, then they're expanded to as much as we can understand nowadays with our present limited capacity. You look bewildered, like you didn't understand that last part. You wanted to go on further?
Yeah, I didn't get my question answered.
Really? Well, you got to answer again until you get it answered, don't you?
No, I'm like, is it going to take me 4 days? Sometimes you tell me stuff and I just like sit with it, sit with it, sit with it, sit with it, and then I'm like, okay, I got it. So I'm like, is it one of those times? But I don't want to risk it because you're going to be gone. So I'm like, okay, Anna.
Not gonna be for days, it's gonna be for months.
Yeah, I'm going to be like, wait, all
There
right.
is email.
What should I ask? Okay, I don't understand. Okay, so everyone keeps on saying demigods keep taking birth in this movement, but I'm reading here.
No, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. The demigods are servants of Krishna, but they have intense desires to control, and therefore their devotion is mixed. So they don't get to be with Krishna personally, except in very special occasions, like Indra, when he came during lifting the Govardhan hill, or Brahma, when he came to steal the cowherd boys and calves. But in general, they don't get to see him.
That's why I was confused, because I know they're his servants. So I'm like, why don't they just go?
Because they're still attached to controlling. And that attachment, even though they're great souls, they're still jiva souls, and they're still conditioned by opulence and by position and by name and fame. So even though they're given very high responsibilities by Krishna to manage the resources of the material nature and accept the sacrifices of the human beings to keep the whole situation in order. Deva and Devyatanina, Tedeva, Parampara Devyanta. I just can't remember the last line of the verse. Deva Devyatanina, Tedeva Devayantuva, Parasparam Bhavyanta, Yena Shrehuam Apyanam. Maybe I got the last line wrong. Anyway, it means that there's cooperation between men and demigods. What is that verse? Sahadyagyakata Sahadyagyakata. In the beginning, the Lord sent forth men and demigods and sacrifices and said to them, be thou happy by this performance of sacrifice, because it will bestow upon you all good fortune and fulfill all your desires. So that's the way the whole universe is structured. You know, there are higher demigods that control the natural resources, and they sometimes come down to earth, and sometimes they pray to come down on the earth because they know that it's easier here to get Krishna consciousness than it is there. Why? Because in the heavenly planets, they're simply using up the effects of their pious activities. And when those effects of those pious activities are used up, then they have to come down. So they generally don't go back to Godhead from the heavenly planets. But sometimes they go to planets above the heavenly planets. And above, there's a process that you go one to the other, but it takes a very long time. Like billions of years to go through that, because each lifetime gets longer and longer. And each place they go, you get longer and longer lifetimes. And they still have to, experience death. They still have to experience the dualities of material existence, but in a much less intense form. Yeah.
Can the demigods give up that want to control?
Yes, but they have to have contact with pure devotees. They have to associate with pure devotees, or Krishna directly, and it happens sometimes. And sometimes, the very high demigods, the ones that are, direct controllers of the light and the sun and the moon and the water and the air, the directions, the things that really, we need to live, or else we don't have them, we don't live. you know, they especially apparently, or not apparently, but sometimes get an opportunity to see Krishna. And then, because they're devotees, they're not demons, they're devotees, they bow down and they pray and they beg forgiveness. And Krishna, he just kind of, okay, he doesn't pay much attention to them. He doesn't like really warm up to them, because he knows that they're going to do it again in the future, because they forget. Just like we forget, over time we forget. So they also, over time, they forget. Especially because there's so much opulence there, so much things to be attached to. Therefore, sometimes Krishna's devotees will experience difficult times as special mercy from Krishna, so that they can actually get it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this isn't going to work. How many times do I have to do this before I learn my lesson? These memories, these thoughts come into the mind of devotees who become qualified by accumulation of pious activities, by accumulation of contact with devotional service, either with knowledge or without knowledge. These are the things that gradually qualify us. And we become qualified. Then when we hear the pastimes of Krishna, we get really interested and we want to know. Yes?
So in just how Krishna comes to this planet, or to our Mother Earth, in different forms, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to recruit and give us mercy to bring us back home, back to Godhead. Does he do that in the heavenly planets also?
No. They don't get the same. They don't get love of God. They get a kind of love, but they don't get pure love of God. They get a kind of love of God, and sometimes they go to Vaikuntha planets, where the love is. But the thing you have to understand is that God is unlimited. Krishna is unlimited, and therefore he has unlimited desires, and he but he likes variety. So the varieties in the spiritual world and in the material world are there because of Krishna's desire to enjoy variety. So therefore, some of those persons may be, they may come and associate with, one of the incarnations of God, one of the expansions of God, and they may go back to that planet where he has his own Vaikuntha planet and is adored and loved and, predominates over that planet. And sometimes he'll come to deliver one of those devotees who wants to be with him in that particular form. Yes, Sarva.
You're coming here to Houston, reading with Sesvalabha and Prabhupada and Krishna. You're enlivening the devotees and boosting us. And when you go away physically, will you still remember us? And
Will I remember you? My God. If you think that I can forget you for a second, that's why I said when I first came in, some of you weren't here when I came in. When I come into this room now, I feel these are actually my intimate associates and friends. Actually.
we're thinking like a mother turtle that lays the eggs on the sand and then goes to the ocean, spends most of the time there with humanity.
Well, that's why we have the internet. I'm going to do this every day the rest of my life, so you want to plug in, you can. It may not be at the same time of the day. You may have to, listen to it recorded rather than live, but it'll be there every day. I made that vow and I'm completely determined.
The same Facebook?
Same Facebook, same page, same me. Don't think that you're the only ones that are going to feel separation around here. Ah. But this is the process. And even we got taught in the material world, absence makes the heart grow fonder. That's the way it works. There's meeting, then there's separation. There's meeting and there's separation. And by that process, our love grows, becomes stronger, becomes enriched, becomes deeper. And in that way, we become eligible and qualified to go back to the spiritual world. Because when we get like that, and we feel enough separation for Krishna and for Krishna's devotees, then Krishna comes and takes us back home. And not only that, but even if we, by force of circumstances, can't chant at that moment, for whatever reason, he'll come anyway. Ananyas chintyanto mam ye janak paryupasate techam nitya piyuktanam yogak chemam vahamyaham. If our love, our devotional service becomes continuous and ananya cheta satatam. Satatam means always. And anya cheta means full heart. Ananya cheta means with the full heart, with nothing else going on. No desire for sense gratification. No desire for anything for myself. Everything for Krishna. Ananya cheta satatam. Yomam, then I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So even if we can't think of Krishna at the time of death, although it says we should think about him at the time of death, but for some reason, if a devotee has served his whole life with love, then even if there's some accident or something happens untoward, or the body becomes such in condition that he can't, Krishna's there and appears and forces his way into the heart of the devotee. Therefore Krishna says, Kontya parijanihi name bhakta pranashati. And just before that, he's my devotee will never perish. And just the verse before that, he says, Apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadhu eva samantavyak samyak vyavasito hisaha. Apichet sudurachara. Even if one does things that are not nice, not according to the ideal standard, if he is engaged in devotional service and doesn't stop the devotional service, then sadhu eva, he is considered by me to be a sadhu, a saintly person. Because why? And not just saintly, but samyak, completely pure. Vyavasito hisa. Why? Because he's determined. He doesn't give up his devotional service under any conditions. And therefore that person is sadhu. And the next verse, Kontya parijanehi nami bhakta pranashati. You declare it boldly, Arjuna, that my devotee never perishes. And once you come to that platform, you become peaceful. You are no longer afraid of anything. You no longer lose your happiness under any circumstances. You no longer feel morose. You no longer feel restless. You no longer feel you have anything more you want to achieve. That is real peace, and therefore it is real happiness. Hare Krishna. And you can taste it. It's not imagination. Okay, I got to go talk with Vaisheshika Prabhu and finish a paper, print a letter. Thank you so much. And tomorrow will be my last reading. And then I'll be in Dallas, so it'll be at the same time on Sunday and on Monday. And then I fly. Then I'll have one night where I miss when I fly to the UK, because I'm overnight there on the plane. Then that next day, which is Tuesday night, Monday night? Wednesday night, thank you. Then we'll start again. Only I'll be 6:30 there, which means 12:30 here. 12:30 in the afternoon, in case you want to tune in. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. These devotees here in Houston have won my heart, so Hare Krishna. Everyone out there in cyberspace, I'm coming to one of you, some of you. See you then. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Binda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.